When I was 15 years old, I had 3 of these fingers completely cut off.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, you can see
Yeah.
how shorter, but I mean, by the grace of God, they reattached them. I can't bend them. But this was just, I mean, I show people this, I'm not to brag, but I mean, this was farm life.
Yeah.
I mean, experiencing this, and I can go into a whole story, but this hardship was another pivotal moment that led me to say, hey, I want to do more with my life. On my mom's side, I can remember when this happened, you know, him praying for me, but him also saying, Jared, he goes, you know, in life, I want you to work with your mind, don't work with your hands.
For me, it was the stress of the unknown.
A lot of people that don't realize it, if you're not in trucking, when people think of trucking, they think of, down here we have this big company up on the corner of 65 and 44 called Prime.
Yeah.
They think of Prime, Swift, Schneider, Warner, JB Hunt, all those. But a lot of people don't realize when you total all those big trucking companies up, let's just say 500 trucks or more, they only represent 7% of all trucks on the road. 7%.
So where's the rest?
It was so emotionally and so tough, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, cause it was like, I got closer to God.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us yet for another awesome podcast here on Suits and Shoes. I'm tremendously honored to present a guest that's been an inspiration for me throughout my journey and entrepreneurship journey. Here in the state of Missouri, there's, as you may already know, not that many successful people as you would find in a big city like Chicago or Silicon Valley. And so today, Jared is with us. Jared is most known for bulk loads. They represent customers totaling over 150,000 trucks. And then in addition to that, family man, has time for agriculture, wants to support other farmers, and in addition, a man of faith. And so in today's time and age, that's like a dime in a dozen, I think, is the traditional saying we have here. And so, Jared, what does it take to be Jared?
Well, you know, there's 2 of me.
Really?
So yeah, I have an identical twin brother. A lot of people don't realize.
I hope his name isn't Jared.
His name is Jesse, but especially, so he still lives up in the St. Louis area.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize that because in high school and college, obviously they see us running around together. But it's interesting what it's like to be me. It's, you know, being a twin, I've always had to share my life with someone else until recently. So I hear, you know, over the last 20 years being married and having a family, I went on my own, but for a long time, I've always had my own, or I've always shared my identity with someone else.
Yeah. That's very interesting to see. Is he a part of your business?
He is not. No, he went. So I know we'll talk about childhood, but when we graduated high school, I went on to the University of Missouri.
Exciting.
Like you. And he went straight into the construction field and was in the unions.
Exciting. So. 150,000 trucks. I don't know if you know this, but I really wanted to go in the trucking space.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. My dad was a truck driver. My brother's a truck driver. Uncle's truck driving. Half of my friends through college had trucking businesses and all very successful. But it's a common thing that Slavic Ukrainians go into. And senior year of college at Mizzou, one of my Ukrainian professors, only Ukrainian professor at the entire university, made me promise him that I wouldn't go into trucking. And so I had to sacrifice my passion for trucking with manufacturing, which no regrets, I love it, but I've always been inspired by it, in part because how complex it is. And to see you in what it seems like a span of maybe 10, 15 years to build out what you did is extraordinary. And I want to start from the roots. What activities, what things through your childhood shaped you to have the success that you have today?
Yeah. Well, you know, Sean Askinosi Chocolate. I read his book years ago, and actually I want to steal this from him. But there's a quote that he says where you'll find your pain, you'll find your passion.
Wow.
And that really resonated for me. I come from a small farming community on this side of St. Louis. Truxton was my hometown. And unless you're driving down I-70 to St. Louis or back to Columbia, you'll see one little stop that says the Truxton exit. There's a truck stop there. But that's where I grew up. but small farming, poor community. We were just very humble beginnings. We lived on this 240-acre farm. We had cattle, hogs, row crops. My dad and uncle started a sawmill, and we sawed logs. But I guess to sum it all up, it was very hard labor. You had the cold winters, the hot summers, and I just remember, and for us, we were very poor. It was later in life I didn't even realize, but my mom said that at one time, like, we were on WIC, and I never even knew that we were, on government assistance.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was something that I wanted to run so far away from growing up. I didn't want anything to do with agriculture. I knew agriculture.
Yeah.
And I knew how to run machinery and all that. But graduating from high school, had a high school teacher, FFA teacher, really encouraged me to go to the University of Missouri.
Oh.
And he just said, hey, I want you to try this. If you don't like it for a semester, you can get enough scholarships. And if you want to go back home, you can. So that was really my stepping stone. It was really him that kind of pushed me to go to college to begin with. But it was funny, when I was in college, I started taking these ag classes and I started meeting other people. And some of these people I meet from all over the state. And I'd say, well, what do you do? He's like, oh, we farm. And I said, what else do you do? Like, no, we farm. Our family farms. I was like, well, how do you make money?
Yeah.
He's like, our whole family farms. They're generational farmers. So that was kind of the first glimpse that I saw that there's actually people that do make a living and a good living in farming. But fast forward that, it was after graduation, and this was right after 9/11, which depends on how old you are, you recognize, but the job market was just flat. So was trying to apply for different jobs and couldn't get hired anywhere. Well, one thing people always know, there's always jobs for truck drivers out there. And so my first job, I was driving a truck. Now, it wasn't over the road, but I was still living in Columbia and got on with a construction supply company in Northern Columbia, delivering construction materials, drywall materials. It was called Rue Materials. But I got on, and I remember going to interview, and the manager of the construction yard, he's looking at my resume and he's like, you just graduated? And I was like, yeah. He's like, hey, you want to come drive? I was like, yeah, I'd like to. And I should back up. I did have, just through summer jobs, I had already had my Class A CDL. So I was already licensed. I knew how to drive a truck. But he's like, yeah, if you want to come work for us. And so, I started delivering sheetrock.
Wow.
And if you've never done it before, never messed with sheetrock, it is.
You had to like unload and load and everything.
Yeah, it is a very physically taxing job. But at that time, I was single and was wanting to make some money. I loved driving and actually fell in love with the job. So it was me and another coworker. We would deliver construction materials, and that's where, so I knew agriculture, but then I started learning about trucking. But then that specific point, that's where I really realized a lot of people don't know trucking. It's not just jumping in, turning the key on, going down the road. You got to have the pre-trip, the post-trip inspections. You got to make sure your load's secure, deliveries, traffic jams, all these components that go into trucking. There can be just a lot of intricacies and things that can happen, a lot of hiccups. So it's not black and white. But started doing that. There was an opportunity to move into the office and at that company. So they took me off the trucks and moved into the office. And that was where I first got a glimpse of kind of business and sales. And it was interesting. The manager at the time, he was saying, when I got in there after a couple months, he was like, man, you're really good at sales. I was like, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm just talking to people. But he's like, no, you really got an knack for this. And I think you always look back at these pivotal moments, but there was one customer. He came in one day and he said, Jared, I can't wait to see where you go in life. Wow. And it just stuck to me. And I'm like, at the time, I was just like, thanks appreciate the compliment. Yeah. But I'm like, what did he mean? Like, he saw something that I didn't see. Yeah. Dreams that maybe I didn't have. So moving forward, my wife and I, we met, and that's a whole other story, but I'll sum it up. Like, it was 4th of July week in 2004. We were on this float trip, or she was with a group. Friends from Kansas City. I was with some cousins and some people from Columbia and back home. But we were floating down the Hoosall Valley River south of Rolla, and her raft and my canoe bumped out on the water. Oh no. And we started talking, and that's how I met her. But she was living in Kansas City at the time. I was still in Columbia. Yeah. And that would have been like 2004. Well, I knew I'd been even praying before that God, I just like, I was wanting to find a relationship all through college, never really dated anyone and found her. And there was just a part that I knew that she was the one.
That's powerful. So to understand this correctly,
Yeah.
like each one of these variables, they played a role in your success today. I'm like getting the goosebumps because I'm writing a book right now, Seven Pillars to Success, of what it takes. And everything you just hit is literally the seven pillars and the root of it, because parents ask me all the time, how did your parents raise you? How did your dad raise you? What could I do to have my kids as successful as you? And I always say hard labor.
Yeah.
Like you got to teach your kids to work. And if you can add to hard labor survival instincts, you got the trifecta right there. For me, it was from a very young age. My parents made us work in the garden. We grew up on WIC and food stamps, and my first pair of jeans, my first pair of shoes, my first cell phone, my first car is all summer jobs, evening jobs. I worked evening construction sites, weekends at McDonald's. Any time off, I'd help my mom clean a residential property. So that hard work ethic was instilled inside of me. And now I look and it's like, I can't stop. I had one of my directors within our company ask me, "Oh, how do you do it all?" And I sat there and I'm like, well, I just can't stop. The hard work ethics put inside of me.
Yeah.
I get 16 hours a day. I use it very efficiently. I don't have hobbies. I work, and when I'm not working, I'm working.
Yeah.
And on vacation, my wife it's like she can see me. You're working, aren't you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sitting here next to you, enjoying the sun. We're like, just go get your computer.
Yeah.
And I'll get my computer. I'll be working next to her. So it's like instilled inside of you.
Yeah. You're talking about, I should back up a little bit. Working on the farm, it was lessons that I so didn't want to do, but learned so much from that. A lot of people don't realize when I mentioned the sawmill, we had this old 1940s, 50s, no shields, like just saw blade out there.
Yeah.
But when I was 15 years old, I had 3 of these fingers completely cut off.
Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, you can see
Yeah.
how shorter, but I mean, by the grace of God, they reattached them. I can't bend them. But this was just, I show people this. I'm not to brag, but this was farm life.
Yeah.
Experiencing this, and I can go into a whole story, but this hardship was another pivotal moment that led me to say, hey, I want to do more with my life. I don't want to be part of the farm. I think there was a part two. I can go back and just tell you all these little, but my grandpa on my mom's side, I can remember when this happened, him praying for him, but him also saying, Jared, he goes, in life, I want you to work with your mind. Don't work with your hands. He goes, I work with my hands. I was a concrete mason, but I just always remember those words always kept sinking to me. Work with your head, not your hands. Work with your head. And I have nothing against people that work with their hands. Right. Honestly, I find that so fulfilling. But for him to really push me to say, hey, use your mind and your brain more than your hands.
Yeah, it's I couldn't agree more. My mom was in my life that always told me, Paul, you got to work with your mind. She's like, I didn't bring you to this country to be a truck driver. No offense to any truck drivers. Like, I got my CDL junior year of college, and I drove cross country to pay through tuition to get married, cover my wedding, was all coast to coast over the road. And I don't know if there's a harder profession than truck driving. For me, it was the stress of the unknown. Like, what if someone cuts me off? What if I swerve? To top it all off.
That's what I was saying earlier. It's the inconsistency.
Yeah. It was so stressful for me. And I remember the story, freshman year of high school in health class. There was a girl that was killed, and a truck driver had swerved, and the tail of his semi-truck hit her car and dead on the scene. And for me, I was always so tense when I was driving not to swerve. And to top that off, I always asked my brother, my older brother, Sergey, he's a truck driver as well. And I always asked him, like, hey, is it true? Like, if the tail of the trailer hits, is that bad? Like, I'm so stressed. And we were driving through a construction zone. There's those big old barrel cones. And he's like, let me show you how dangerous swerving can be. And he swerves with the tail of this 53-foot tractor trailer. Yep. And he hits the cone. We were going maybe 55, 60 miles an hour. It had to have shot like 40 yards. I mean, it was like cannonball launch. So when I say it's a stressful job, it's a stressful job. And, I think my longest run was, in true confession, 18 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so by the time I got to where I was going, it was unreal. Like I at that point, I couldn't even fall asleep. I was so sleep deprived. And so my mom always told me, hey, I didn't bring you in this country just to be a truck driver. Like, you're young, you went to college, like go have a bigger impact on this world. And again, not to downgrade the importance of truck drivers, and they keep all our lights on. We probably get 2 to 3 loads a day here that keep our operations going. But I really believe, similar to in church, how there's the pastor, the preacher, the singer, and then all the way to the ushers in the back, they're all vital. And if you take one role out of it, it all starts to fall apart. And so in your life, how did you know that the moment came that you realized, like, wow, everything my parents told me, the mentors, the hardships, and I'm sure you felt a calling within. What was that turning point where like, all right, I'm going to start my own business?
Yeah, I think this will transition well. So I tell you, met my wife and knew that I wanted to be closer with her, that we were getting serious. So applied online. Actually, I posted my resume on careerbuilder.com out of all places. This is like early 2000s too, where, but I posted it out there, not thinking anything was going to happen. And it was 2 weeks later, this recruiter from this company called Bartlett Grain calls and says, "Hey, I see you have an ag background and trucking experience. Like we're looking for someone to come do that." So again, small farm kid, I go to Kansas City. This was at that time at the Kansas City Board of Trade building, right there on the plaza, but go up top floor, go in and interview. And it was, I was just kind of more starstruck, just like this, I'm going to this big corporate office, small farm kid, but I interview, get the job. But that's where I really learned more about agriculture and trucking and supply chain. And for me, you talked about this earlier, like your mind's always thinking. I think at the heart of it, I'm a creator. If I can be blatantly honest, I hate when people say they're entrepreneurs. I get entrepreneurs, but I think it's overused now. I never consider myself as an entrepreneur. I like to create and I like to build new things. I like to figure out new things and create something maybe that's not created before. Maybe that's called entrepreneurship, but I just, like I said,
I feel like everyone's an entrepreneur. They call it.
Some people market themselves as an entrepreneur. And again, I'm not slamming that, but I'm like, I don't put it in my profile pictures that I'm whatever. And especially serial entrepreneur. I don't, so sorry, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. But anyways, I started figuring out that trucking, especially the company I was working for, it was super complex. A lot of people that don't realize that if you're not in trucking, when people think of trucking, they think of, down here, we have this big company up on the corner of 65 and 44 called Prime. They think of Prime, Swift, Schneider, Warner, JB Hunt, all those. But a lot of people don't realize when you total all those big trucking companies up, let's just say 500 trucks or more. They only represent 7% of all trucks on the road. 7%.
So where's the rest?
That other 93% are the small owner operators, your family members, other family members. It's 1 to 5 truck operators. And that's when I started at Bartlett. I started realizing, like, wow, this industry, it's super fragmented, and whether that's a positive or negative, but there's a lot of opportunities there. A lot of these small owner operators, they need help finding loads. They need help with their insurance. They need help payments. They need help back, and you go through the list. And that's where at first I saw, and when I was working with that company, I was helping coordinate shipments. So the company, we would have shipments of grain that needed to get moved from Western Kansas into Kansas City or wherever. So I was on the phone calling these trucks. Well, in 2008, this little device which I have in my pocket, I'm sure you have in your pocket, called the iPhone came out. And I started realizing, well, like, man, this can really digitize and revolutionize a lot of these practices. And that's kind of where, in my head, it started really taking off. How do we use technology to help the truck driver and streamline the communication process? So in a roundabout way, that's where it was probably that 2008 is where it's like, wow, I'm learning a lot about this industry. There's a lot to be solved here. And man, I'd like to go maybe take a crack at it myself. I'll say this too, and this is a really good segue to this. So my wife and I, we got married in 2006. I was working with this grain company, but one weekend we were back home visiting with my father-in-law, and he was a retired executive from Walmart, worked right underneath Sam Walton, one of the greatest retailers of all time. So he just had all this knowledge and wisdom, and we would talk back and forth. But when I was still working at a company, one time he came up, we were washing cars. It was one Sunday afternoon. And he said, "Jared, what do you plan to do, the rest of your career?" And I was like, his name was Rob. I was like, "Well, Rob, I'm working for this company and I'm moving my way up the ladder. I'm getting promoted and they're rewarding me well." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, I just want to give you some sound advice." And he said, "There's 2 ways that you can have financial success." He said, "Number 1, you work for a company that's going to give you equity or options,
Yeah.
give you stock or equity in the company. Or he said, two, go out and create your own and build it yourself. And so I went, that was down in Branson at his lake house. So we're driving home, but like the whole next week, I'm just thinking like, he kind of planted that seed to say, hey, if I want a true financial success, it's going to be one of those two options. So that was just another pivotal moment for me. It was like seeing that there was an opportunity to digitize the freight industry, but then at the same time getting pressure or mentorship saying, hey, if you want financial success, here's the way to get it. So that's where, it was in 2011. I decided to kind of take the leap of faith. And, I can remember my wife and I, we were flying to Mexico. It was like a little couples trip. We just had our daughter. We always had these just little planned trips. I was still working, and I just asked her, I was like, honey, like, God's put this in my heart, or I don't know what else to say, but like, I have this strain or pressure. Like, I want to go try this.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you think? And she's like, I'll support you.
Wow. Yeah, that's crucial in starting. I talk about it in my book, and every time I speak at a speaking engagement, especially business centered, is your inner circle, the people that surround you. I remember talking to a billionaire in Florida, and he calls it a tribe. It's like wife, kids, people you travel with. Even he went as far as saying your banker, your brokers, like the people that you day to day see. If they're not 100% supporting you, if they're not upholding you, sooner or later, it'll start having a negative impact on you, on your life, on the trajectory of your success. Talk to me about those early days. I know for me, it wasn't easy. I love sharing my story. My wife said yes. So without her knowledge, because I knew she would probably not let me, I sold their car, sold their house, moved in with her parents, and started with $10,000. And so it was like, I always say, just start, you don't have to. Anytime a young entrepreneur or a young startup reaches out to me and says, hey, we need 100,000 or we need $1 million investment, I always say, no, you don't. You got to start working, start bringing in clients, learning where your weaknesses are, use the profit. You don't need $1 million investor. I was just talking to someone this morning. They keep getting on to me, hey, we need 150,000 for this tech startup in the trucking space. I'm like, no, you don't. You just got to go do the work. What did that early on transition from corporate employment into starting your own company look like?
So I'll say this, when we, the very first crack at it was a failure.
Wow.
I found some other partners, and we'd tried, and I won't go into the weeds, but it didn't work. So I was pretty down. I was like, maybe this wasn't clearly meant to be. Maybe God was misleading me on the path that I think I was going. And it was really tough, because I was at this moment in my life where I'm like, what, like, you're pushing me. I'm getting pushed in this direction, but it's not working. But I'll say this, I found my business partner today, Matt Ferdine is his name, but he was, he had already kind of started another business kind of similar to bulk loads. And, but he was wanting to kind of expand it, and we got together, and that's where I just saw, like, hey, maybe there's another opportunity, because for me, we're a technology company. I'm not a developer. I've never coded, developed anything in my life, but I knew the industry and I knew the pieces to make it work. I just needed someone to help me build it. So Matt was the builder of that. But yeah, we started together, and you talk about the road bumps. So I already failed once. I leave corporate world. And yeah, had some savings, but we kind of had this calculation that we knew that, hey, within 6 months, if this isn't working, we're going to have to change or do something. And so we're still building the technology in the site, zero income. I'm sitting there making calls, just trying to build relationships.
Home office, or did you already have
this was in my basement? So yeah, this was, and I still got a picture, but yeah, we took a basement bedroom and carved it out. I put this desk in there. Actually, it was just an old table, and I put a phone up on there and my laptop. But one of the pivotal moments I remember, so I left in April of 2011. It was in July. And, when we were looking at getting this thing going, we thought that we'd be pushing out and making money by June. That wasn't happening. Well, I would say by May, it wasn't happening. By June, it wasn't happening. And we were still just trying to get some stuff developed. But I can remember in July, I was walking through the house, and my wife said, Jared, like, hey, just so you know, we're about out of money.
Wow.
And she said, hey, we're going to have to start dipping into our long-term savings, because we had some stuff, 401ks and all that. And man, I remember going downstairs and just like, again, praying like, God, I thought this is what you called me to be. I thought this was going to work. And again, it was just like, it was so emotionally and so tough, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, cause it was like, I got closer to God from that. And I can remember every day just praying, if this is your will, if this is your will, if this is your will, let it be. If this is your will. And just trusting in him. But still at that moment being like, I don't have any other options. And I think that's where some people also miss it today. Not all, but they still have a backup plan.
Yeah.
There's, sometimes when you get into business, like, and again, I'm not saying be foolish, but if you know that there's a way out or a cop out, are you fully in it? Are you fully going to be, no matter what it takes, in it to make this thing succeed?
Yeah.
And I was just at a point where I'm just like, this has got to work. I don't have any other options. And yeah, I can go get a job or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was that next month in August, we finally got it ready. We turned the switch on, for lack of a better term. And then first day we had, 500 in revenue, and then 1,000. And then, it just kept compiling after that.
I bet that 500 felt more than any contract you've
Oh yeah, dude. I remember my partner and I getting, my partner, he's in California, but like, dude, we were text messaging back and forth, or maybe it was just Messenger, but it was just like, yes, yeah, every one of those. And I tell you, even today though, we still celebrate every win, every customer, and just like it was the first day. We've been now 15 years in business, and it's still just as much fun. All those wins.
Yeah, I love how Jack Stack says all the time, you got to celebrate the little wins.
Yeah,
those little wins is what makes this journey, memorable. What leaves an impact on not only our lives but the people around us. I remember vividly as you're talking about that, it just came so clear in my mind, running out of cash. So for me, it happened 8-9 months after I started my business about 5 years ago. And I remember this day, like I sat on the ground, just exhausted, and I'm working 15, 16-hour shifts. I hug my trash can. I try to throw up. I can't throw up because I realize I haven't eaten in 24 hours.
Nothing.
Yeah. And then the thought comes across my mind. God called me into starting this business. I've done everything I can. Yeah. It's not like I was sitting around, or today entrepreneurs, first year in business, they get their investment and they're in the Bahamas network. No, I'm grinding in the trenches. Like pictures early on, I'm underneath vans. I'm building vans. I'm doing everything, wearing all the hats. I'm on the phone saying, hey, let me ask the production manager. And then I switch over and I'm thinking I'm the production manager. Let me ask myself. And I realized like, wow, I've done everything I can. And so I pushed the trash can aside. I got on my knees in my office. I said, God, I surrender to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to what I can control. I can control building RVs. I can control, take care of my people. Literally that same day, got a phone call from a customer. It was end of the year. So this is like Christmas time, holiday season. And the customer says, hey, I need to write off $300K. I want to buy one of your vans, but I need to make the wire transfer before the holidays. Can you take my money now? I'm like, yes, I can take your money now. Let me go talk to accounting. Hold, I'm accounting. Here's our wire transfer information. And so it's like those moments along the journey, I think too many young, especially the Gen Zs, don't understand because they grew up in such good times.
Yep.
That famous quote, what does good times create? Weak people. What do you think the outlook is for Gen Zs? How can Gen Zs today, I guess, in other words, break this kind of weakness, culture, mindset that has been fostered and created over the last 10 years?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you put it that way because, again, you can't blame, they grew up in an environment that's different. So you can't, sometimes people want to say, well, you didn't,
Oh, it's totally our parents' fault. Like,
yeah.
You guys gave us good times.
I think, honestly, what they're doing now, I think you don't want the hardships, but you got to go through hardships. I just don't like and again, you've been on this path reading books and studying other businesses that, been successful, and every one of them, they just have had these, literally come to Jesus moments.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's no way about it. I've never met one successful business that they didn't have. I mean, that all in moment where like, hey, this is just, I have nothing else.
Right.
God, I need your help.
Yeah. I once read an article. It was later on in my college, like junior, senior year at Mizzou. And I always thought the 3 follow-up rule. That's what we were taught in high school. I love sales. I was always top fundraiser. Like I outsold entire classrooms. One person. I love door-to-door selling. And I felt like I was doing something good for other people. And I was always told 3 follow-ups. Then early on in college, I was sold 7. And then end of my college, right before I graduated, I read an article that said 22 follow-ups. And so I made a rule of thumb in my life. I need to get 22 no's before I get my yes.
Yeah.
And so now I like reverse psychology into me to where no's are no longer disappointing. Whenever I get a no, I'm kind of like excited and I'm like, hey, I need to get so many more no's and I'll get to my yes. Well, how do you persevere through those no's and challenges in your life? Like, are you working out of fear? Are you working out of the option of a win? Like, what is your kind of inside motivation to work through those challenges in running a business?
Early in our conversation, I talked about, where you find your pain, you'll find your passion. I think also when we think about business and when we think about what we're doing, yeah, did I want to create a successful business? Yeah. But I think more we have to be focused on who are we serving and are we serving those people to our best of our ability? I'll back up a little bit. And this was another part of why we started Bulk Loads. In the trucking industry, one thing I realized when I started at Bartlett Grain, a lot of these companies, or I should say a lot of people in the organization or in the industry in general, they referred to truck drivers as just find me a truck.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this guy's got a name, or give me a couple trucks here or whatever. And, you do this. But they treated truck drivers very much as a commodity.
Right.
And it was one thing myself and actually one of my colleagues, I was like, man, these people are salt of the grass people. Yeah. A lot of them, for me, it went back to my childhood. It was a lot of like, hey, these truck drivers, they were my uncles and my, neighbors and stuff like that drove the truck. So I had I was very empathetic for the people that we were working for. And I think, so I sum all that up to say, when we started Bulk Loads, it was like, really like, how do we empower these smaller companies that don't have the sales force, the marketing force, the power, the networking to give them the tools so they can succeed. So I think that was another thing too. Really looking at like, not just like, hey, how do I grow this business? Mm-hmm. I really, truly believe if you serve someone to the best of your ability and serve them well, the financial part will happen. Yeah. And I think sometimes we can we reverse engineer, like, hey, I want to make, $5 million this year. And it's like, well, that's not the point. Is like serve it and being and serving people really well, financial reward.
That's powerful. Too many times we look through our faith, and I remember a powerful preacher once spoke about what is our love for Christ, our passion to serve God come from? Fear or love? And it really made me think, like, I'll be honest, there's some days when it's out of fear, like, I don't want to go to hell. Yeah. I remember my grandma always say, if you do that, you're going to go to hell. And like, I didn't want to go to hell. Yeah. But when I dove deeper, it was like this supernatural love for God. And that's what really pushed me through the challenges, the tribulations, the moments when you're questioning. I remember shortly after we got married, we're still in college, my wife, I think it was like 3-4 months after we got married. We're young, we're like early 20s. Yeah. And so she gets into critical condition where they are, doctor saying, we don't know if she'll make it through the morning. And in those moments, it's like, never for a moment did I doubt God or his existence, because it was somewhere deep within. Mm-hmm. And I just remember saying, God, there's nothing I can do. Like, this is, I even at one point, like, I'm in the hospital, I'm like, God, this is your daughter. This is your daughter. Like, you need to do something. Business is the same way. Like, if you don't have this deep rooted passion to help, for me, what helped me with 27 North and what gets me through the low points and helps me stay humble in the high points is a love for the people that are traveling. Mm-hmm. It all started when I was servicing RVs back in the day, and I had an elderly couple just buy a brand new 6-figure RV, and the gentleman had spilled a container of coffee. I think it was like 3 or 3.5 liter container of coffee, and the countertop swelled up, the cabinet swelled up, the floor swelled up. So the technicians came, we tore everything out, called the insurance adjuster. He deemed it a total loss. And they're sitting in my office and they're crying and saying, we waited our entire life. We put our retirement savings into buying this RV. Doctor says we have 1 to 2 years of good health left to travel. And the dealer's saying us the lead time for a new RV is 18 months. what do you tell them? You know, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, that's my drive. So whether it's a good time or a hard time, we just went through a nasty recession in the RV industry. I think half of our competition didn't make it through this recession. And those that are still with us say they have one season left. It's like this deep passion to help people. And whenever I get a chance to mentor younger business owners and business women and men, I always say, if you don't have that deep passion, like the want for money only gets you so far, but there's only so many lawsuits you can handle. There's only so many lawsuits you can handle before you give up. What are some other things that keep you motivated, that keep you driving? I mean, I have a friend that's got 500 trucks, a little over 500 trucks. And there's nights where he sleeps with his headphones. So I personally know the stress that it takes. But 150,000 trucks, like, what is your why? What is like, what pushes you through all of this?
I think is, you know, I'm 45 now, and it's crazy, these different chapters of your life. And I think there's a little bit of like, what kind of impact can you have on an industry? And for us, it's the bulk trucking industry, and what can we do to continue to improve the lives of these drivers? So I think if I can sum it up that way, it's like, that's my driver of the day. It's like, can we continue to serve these guys? You know, my father-in-law, which I mentioned, he was a retired from Walmart, past executive, but he said, you know, if you look at Sam Walton mission wasn't to build the largest retail company.
Right.
His was to deliver products at the best value for the customer. Oh. And he said, if you really think about it, there's been no other retailer. There may be an argument today with Amazon, some of these others, but Walmart, that actually brought down the cost of living for the U.S. citizen in Walmart, because they came in and they were just so focused on delivering the lowest price at the best value to these clients. So I think there's a little bit of that same thing. Like, how do we continue to provide value? You know, bulk loads, if you don't know, we're a marketplace, but since then we've created like 5 other companies we kind of have this ecosystem. So, you know, after starting bulk loads in 2014, we created a factoring arm or finance. So now we can quick pay these drivers.
Nice.
That's one that we serve, over, I think 4,000 customers a day on that one. We also have an insurance arm, so we can provide truck insurance. We also have other software, TMS, where we can help with dispatching. We now have a compliance and safety division. So for us, it's just continuing. What are these value adds that we can keep doing? So they're really that driver, that small business owner, the one that I was saying, the fiberless trucks, they can focus on what they love to do. They can focus on driving the truck, running the business. And that's really why they got started. I'll say this one thing, you know, it was a compliment we heard a year ago. One of our clients has said, hey, you know, because I use some of your solutions, what used to take me 30 hours a week just billing out tickets, now it takes me 3 hours. Wow. So when you think about that, so that's now 30 hours that he was even saying, now I can spend watching my grandchildren play baseball or sports. So I guess that's really at the heart of it. It's just continue to provide that value to.
I think you're qualified now to write a book about it. I noticed in my life, like, from my graduating class in high school is like 400-ish kids. My graduating class in college, I think, was 2,500, just the business branch, not counting the university as a whole. There's a lot of them that have tried many ventures, but all have failed. And something that I noticed common just through my class, my peers, is all of the ones that wanted it to be centered around money, yachts, jets, like the fun stuff, failed.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I love, I don't know why, but I always compare business to marriage. If you're getting married just to have fun with a girl, like, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna last. But if you're getting married for the sense of sacrificing and helping, I still remember to this day, I was speaking at a youth conference, and somehow during the Q&A came up, you know, what marriage is like. And I was just a newlywed, so I can give advice, right? And so I was like, okay, this is what marriage is like. The morning after you guys get married, you guys are going to roll over in bed and you're going to tell each other good morning. And if you don't brush your teeth before you say good morning, your breath's going to smell from the last night's dinner, whatever you had at the wedding. And I kid you not, there's 3 or 4 young guys in the front row and they go, really? Same with business. Like, if you don't grind, the moment you stop working on yourself, self-development, the moment you stop grinding, this moment you start self-developing, the moment you stop doing anything in business, it almost feels like it starts falling apart. It almost feels like, oh, wow, I'm shocked the customer's disappointed. Like, really? You didn't over deliver. You didn't keep it centered around your employees. Of course, half of them are going to walk away from you. I want to transition to leadership. That's something that I feel is probably in the greatest, like if I had to pick one thing, like what the greatest variable that's lacking in business today is leadership. I don't know if it's because of the good times. I don't know if it's because of people just getting kind of comfortable. Maybe everything plays in a role, but how do you develop leadership within your company, within your current and new employees? I can't imagine what it's like having five. I have one company. I mean, I have many LLCs, I should say, but I have one core business. And it seems like half my time goes into development. So what is your approach to leadership? How do you develop leadership?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm still learning. So that's an approach. I still read leadership books and study some of the greats. Well, one thing I have realized, with our company now, there's multiple ownership, but we have, over 70-ish employees now. So there's a lot of different levels and all that. I guess if I could sum it up in one point, it's like always delivering the mission of the business, the overall business. So we have multiple entities, but it's still serving, again, that small customer. And we have bigger customers, but it's really serving those customers to the best of our ability with the products and solutions that we can. And I think as a leader, you have to continue to reemphasize, because again, that's why I got into business. To be honest, like I never got into business because I wanted to manage a whole bunch of employees. That just comes with it as you get in, as you grow a business. But the business was really serving those clients. So I think as a leader, if I could just sum up one or two points, it's always delivering that mission over and over and over and over and over, whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly, whether it's at the Christmas dinner, whether it's at some team event, but what is our mission? What is our mission? What is our mission? Because I think if you keep drilling that down, and what I've seen with the leaders, they know that. You can look at some of these companies, and again, you can go with the iconic ones. What's Apple's mission? What's Amazon's mission? What's, Tesla's mission? But those leaders, they've done a really good job of really simplifying what their mission is.
Yeah. I recently was talking to a really successful CEO of a manufacturing plant out of Cincinnati, and we were at a big trade show, and I asked him about leadership and retention and developing employees, and he gave me this kind of statistic that kind of startled me. He's like, "Paul, I just expect to retain 1 in 4 employees." I was like, "Whoa!" Like that's like we have. I'll be the first to say, manufacturing is not easy. So our lower third of entry-level employees, especially on the production line, there's a turnover there. It's everywhere, and I think it's inevitable. But what is your approach to retention? Are you struggling with it in your life? What does recruiting look like? I just want to break down what it takes to build a team successfully like you have.
Yeah, I'll say, we get turnover, and there's some of it that does hurt sometimes because you take it personal, because some of these you're trying to build leaders up and mentors and people that you think that are going to be with you for long term. But I think for those, you have to show what the future looks like, and you have to show opportunities and ways to grow. And if people don't, if there's ever a point where someone doesn't see the next opportunity, I think that can be a dangerous spot for them, because I know not everybody's wanting to go to the top of the ladder, but everybody wants to keep saying, "Hey, how do I grow? How do I, personally and professionally grow, financially grow?" And I think as a leader, you have to be crystal clear on like, here's the opportunities, here's where we're going, here's going to be the next opportunity. Now, I need you to help, and I need you to have buy-in and skin in the game. But man, here is the opportunities to grow an organization.
That's powerful. I definitely was really struck by his statistic, but looking into other manufacturing plants, it's pretty bad. And I think from my observation and limited experience, I've only ran a business for 5 years, so I still feel like a child. I always tell my mom is sometimes very impressed by me and sometimes very worried. And I say, "Mom, if you want to know how I'm doing, think back to how I was when I was 5 years old." And she'll get a good giggle out of this. And I say, "That's how I am in business. I'm a 5-year-old in business. I have so much to learn." I tell her I meet with individuals that have been in the business 45 years, and they say, "We've learned that we know nothing. So what do you expect me to have at 5 years?" But anyways, I noticed that if we centered our focus around our customer the way we do around our employees, I think it'd be a game changer. I know in the trucking industry, growing up in it, and I think more than half my family, being truck drivers, I've learned that unfortunately, truck drivers treat it like numbers. And I've been in these dispatch offices, and it's like it almost feels like an FBI headquarters. Everyone's on the phones, 2 phones, 3 screens. I mean, it's insane. And they're saying, "Hey, where's driver 137? Where's driver one?" And I'm like, numbers? Like this is pretty crazy. And
Yep.
I don't know, maybe that's what it takes at that caliber and that level. But I know one thing for sure: if you center a company around the employee and the customer,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the perfect trifecta. You got the product or service, employee, and then you got the customer. I love studying Menards because I did my internship there,
Hmm.
and then I did the manager trainee program. I had an offer to go to corporate, and I just learned that wow, they literally their business model is employee and customer. Like that's and a lot of times people think, what is the secret sauce? And their headquarters is so locked down, and there's like you have to have an ID badge to get in the break room, which I get it. You know, you got to keep
Yeah.
stuff secret. But I'll be the first to say, I mean, they broke it down to things that are lacking today. How many times have you gone to a restaurant nowadays or somewhere and you're impressed by the customer service? I feel like it's so rare today to find, and it's so cool on their training videos. They have a video that if you see a customer walking around confused, you have to come up and ask them if you know.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
imagine if we built our businesses on that. And it just seems like common sense. When I started my business, my dad always told me, Paul, you have to have your managers, spouses, and children's names memorized and their birthdays. And I started doing that, and I see like, wow, this is really cool. And I was sitting having a similar podcast with a business owner, probably 1,000 times bigger than me. He's like, Paul, what are you doing for like retention? He's like, I'm constantly losing directors and managers. And I'm like, well, I have a spreadsheet at this point because there's so many of them, and I love sending spouses gifts and birthdays, and they're like, wow, did you learn that in college? I'm like, nope, my dad told me that. I'm doing it. It works. They're like, that's so cool. We're going to incorporate that. And that company actually incorporated it. What are some things that you do centered around your employees now, transitioning from taking care of your truck drivers to your staff that kind of sets you apart from any other company?
Yeah. One thing what you said, we take for employees, they want to be heard and they want to be noticed.
Yeah.
They want to be heard, they want to be noticed. So one thing in our culture, we try to do everything we can to make sure people have that voice.
Yeah.
One thing unique about us, and it's as we've gotten larger, we've had to kind of orchestrate it. We used to have like a morning quick meeting where everybody got together. And again, this was when there was like 5 or 6 of us, now 7. But now we do it. It's a Zoom meeting, but every Wednesday, 9 a.m., we all get on there and we have a list of things, but it's everything from like anniversaries, employee anniversaries that are recognized, birthdays, if someone's getting married, if someone had a baby. But also you talked about kind of special things. We talk about wows, like was there something that we did that wowed an employee, or did we see something else that another company did that wowed us? And we share those stories. It was just actually a couple weeks ago, this lady was in our organization. She was talking about how she's scared to fly, but she found this deal. I think it was on TikTok or one of the platforms where you can dial a pilot. So it's a pilot that's not flying, but he will coach you through what's going on, because a lot of the fear of flying is you don't know what's going on.
Right.
But she found out, and she said it was like the greatest experience. She goes, it helped reduce my fear of flying.
Wow.
So that was like it was a wow. It was like, oh, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's for us. It's really, right now, every Wednesday, trying to get that together. Again, we really try to focus. We have a summer party. Obviously we have winter parties.
Yeah.
We try to do everything we can, because today in a tech era, again, you can be pretty distant, but we try to get people together physically. In the winter months, we don't do as much, but as we get into the summer months, we do company picnics and barbecues and anything to get people outside. And because again, you don't get to know people at work.
No.
It's always got to be outside of work is where you really get to know those people.
Wow factor. I like that. I just remembered another thing when you said the wow factor, another wow factor that we have here. I don't know where this all stemmed from. My team tells me it comes from me, but we have this quote, treat the customer and the employee like you would your mother-in-law before you got married. Generally speaking, what does a young man, a young woman especially, do prior to marriage? they go above and beyond to
Oh
impress
yeah, yeah,
their mother-in-law,
yeah. That's good.
pre-marriage.
Yeah.
And so now we have this kind of hidden quote within our company. Like, what would we do if this was like right before our wedding, right before we propose, and we're trying to really impress our mother-in-law? And whenever you break it down into that, you really start getting these creative wow factors, whether it's treating our employees in any given situation to our customers. I said I compare business to marriage. It's not just marriage, it's family as a whole. One of the best advice I got from a mentor in my life, he's like, employees are like children. They probably, are you allowed to take your children downtown and give them up to children's division whenever they upset you? And I'm like, well, no. He's like, same with your employees. He's like, yeah, there's a certain extent where you just got to let them go for the sanity of the company. But if you're gonna, let them go because they're, 3 minutes late, I remember working at McDonald's, and but I don't get in trouble for saying this, but if you're more than 5 minutes late 3 times in a row, 4 times in a row, you are up for grounds for termination.
Yeah.
And it's like there's so many variables: weather, car maintenance. You had a long night. Woke up with a migraine. You're a few minutes late. And I remember, I mean, it caught me disciplined, but rushing to work, I'd be running in like swipe. At that time, it was a swipe. Now it's a thumbprint to get in on time. And it's like, that's one of the reasons here we say, be here around 8 o'clock. Some come at 7:30, some come at 8:30, some come at 9. We're not going to write you up or terminate you if you're 5 minutes late. Transition to the next phase of this conversation: faith. Faith in business more so. Today in the tech social media world that we live in, I think it's changed now with the change in presidency, but it seems like faith was not only pushed out of the family, the school, the hospitals, but also out of business. And over the last 5 years, I've seen a lot of businesses do some pretty ruthless things. What is the role that faith and God plays in your business?
Well, obviously, you heard me earlier talking about just how much me being led by God or praying to God for the business to work. But, it's really actually been, bulk loads. We've been now again going on year 15, but it was probably not even 5 years ago that we took more of a faith approach in the workplace. But I'll tell you this, there's he's the CEO, Sean Copeland of Regent Bank, based out of Tulsa, but he's got the 94X.
I think so.
So I went to a dinner one night, a men's dinner, and it was called the Kinsman Journal, which I sit on the board. Great organization, highly recommend. But I heard this Sean Copeland talk and just gave this great message. But at the very end, he goes, I used to be so scared to pray in the workplace. And he starts studying and he said this, he goes, I want you all to know you cannot get sued for praying in the workplace. Now you can't force it on anybody, but as long as you make it optional, there's been no lawsuit, litigation, court decided. And for me, I was just like, why am I holding back on my, faith? And like, why am I nervous about that? So it was that was a Tuesday night. That very next Wednesday, we had that morning meeting. Yeah. And at the end of the meeting, I was like, I'm quivering. And usually I'm not nervous at all. And I was just like, hey, y'all, if this is optional, but if you don't mind, I'd like to always end in a prayer. I go, you all can leave at this time. It's not a big deal. But you want to stick around? Everybody stayed in there and we prayed. And I had so many people come up afterwards and were like, man, thank you for doing that. And that's so much. So that's been a big one. I host a podcast. And we started praying on that at the end of the show, praying for our community and for our members. We have a prayer email that we send out to our whole subscriber base that they can send us prayer requests. Those come in anonymous and we pray over our community and people that need prayer. So it's a huge part of our culture. Again, we know that everybody's on a different journey and some people may not be, but we always want to leave that option open. So it's been a very integral role of our organization. We're proud of that.
That's powerful. I have a very similar experience. We were probably year 3 in business about 2 years ago, and I was very nervous to pray. And I heard and learned that there's a hospital here in town, and I actually personally heard a prayer done, Mercy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're ginormous, a behemoth of a hospital. I mean, they're all over the state, and now they're expanding to other states. That they started managers meetings with like doctors and admins with a prayer. And it just so happened we had an employee from the hospital who's a higher level manager here at our company. And I just asked him one day, I'm like, hey, you think it'd be acceptable or professional if we just said a prayer in our managers meeting? He's like, oh, I used to lead them at the hospital all the time. And I'm like, well, what? Where have you been? And so he leads a lot of our prayers now. And I've noticed firsthand, similar to you, the impact it has on these individuals' lives. I'll never forget a day I had one technician that was walking by and was just really sad. And I came up, I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, my grandmother's got dementia and she's just like really in a dark place right now. And doctors don't know if she's going to make it, hospice care. I'm like, hey, can I pray for you guys? And which is weird because it wasn't common practice to me prior to that. Like, I don't know, maybe it's because the Slavic community I grew up in, but no one's really just randomly came up to me at work
Yeah.
and asked me to pray for me. She said a short prayer. Not even a week goes by. He comes back and he says, Paul, my grandmother's feeling so much better. Thank you for that prayer. No one's done that for me. I want to visit the church that you go to. And for me, it was like, wow, I'm like a part-time minister here. And it's so amazing because it just gave so much more meaning and value to my work and what I do here. I think we as business owners often get so carried away, and rightfully so, by problems that we forget the individuals that are around us are the reason we're able to have what we have. I love to sometimes look at our company tree and I'm like, making sure we're lean, making sure we're efficient. I'm like, does everyone here a vital piece? And I'm like going through this and, almost 100 employees. And I'm like, wow, everyone's crucial.
Yeah.
And I'm like, take away one component and it'll have a domino effect. And the organization starts to fall apart. We're in a very, very lean operation. What other thoughts and feedback do you have for business owners that are struggling to kind of show or allow their faith to work in their workplace?
Well, I think there's a misconception that if you're praying a prayer, you have it all together. And I think so many people think that, hey, just because I'm leading a prayer, like, he's more righteous. And that's quite the opposite. I mean, I can be, having a fight with my spouse and kids and then coming right into work and people don't know that story and not leading a prayer. And again, I think that's where it's just like, hey, we're all making mistakes. We're all human here. Again, we're all going to sin. It doesn't give us a free pass to, but hey, I think for us, we always have to check our ego and be humble. So that'd be my advice to them. Like, hey, you don't have to, by offering prayer doesn't mean that you're perfect.
Right.
And it's just something that it's something that you're giving to others and offering to others because you care that much about them. And I think that's got to be the mindset, because if you're doing it as and again, I say this all sincerity, don't do it as a showpiece whatsoever. Right. This isn't a marketing ploy because you're a faith company. It's just because, hey, we want to, because that's another transition for us. It's like, hey, there isn't a separation in, your faith and business, and it should all be incorporated together. So we want to show that. So, but again, we're not a faith-based company, but we're a company with big part of faith, but it doesn't mean we get it wrong. It doesn't mean that we accidentally do something wrong for a customer or somebody slips up or something happens. But hopefully we can be accountable for that, and people will see that.
Age also, I feel like, plays a big role in it. I've noticed through my journey in building a business that, I'm only 29 years old. And so a lot of times it's hard for adults to take me serious. If I had to guess, I'm guessing you went through something similar in your life. I mean, you're 45 and accomplished an extraordinary amount, more than some people do in a lifetime. But what do you do to overcome that age kind of barrier, whether it's employees, bankers, customers? I know truck drivers in general is an older demographic. How do you fit into that whole age barrier within your scope of work?
Honestly, I've never looked at myself there being an age barrier talking with individuals. A lot of our truck drivers, it's an older demographic. So one thing, truckers and farmers, it's an aging demographic. I think it's like 60 or 62's average age. I think it's more about just being relatable with people. And for us, these truck drivers, it's being able to understand their needs. A lot of them come from rural areas. So you can talk, you can always talk weather, but for ours, it's like, hey, I've learned enough to know what that truck is, that trailer that they're running, the struggles that they got out there, what their cost per mile is. And I think that's a more important thing. It's like, hey, how much are you showing that you really understand and care about them? more than trying to debunk the age thing.
Right.
So I think it's really when you're dealing with people, whether it's a client or a colleague or whatever, think about, hey, what are the commonalities or things that you can relate with, where they can build trust to know that, hey, they're talking to me because they want to know me and it's not just a transaction.
Yeah. And the last thing we'll talk about before we transition into suits and shoes, our clothing, is family. I know that's a big challenge for business owners, a big challenge for young entrepreneurs wanting to start a business. I don't know how it all worked out because I still don't understand God's entire plan for me in my life in regards to my family, but we haven't had any kiddos. And so we fostered 11 kids, but fostering is kind of short season. And it always turned out to be in our slower season and not when we're starting a new factory. And so I feel like, for me, it's my wife, work, church. And it's like, I don't have many hobbies or any, I don't think. And I'm able to put a large amount of time into my work. How do you balance family? Because you have children, you have a wife, and you have a company, surpasses my company. How do you balance that?
Yeah. I follow, and I wish I remember the gentleman's name, but the Savannah Bananas is a baseball team.
Yeah.
They've just blown up. They're like selling out all these stadiums. Yeah. It's just entertainment. But he actually just made a post, and they foster kids. Actually, they just adopted them. I was reading this article. Wow. Jesse is his first name. But he actually said, there's not work-life balance, there's work-life harmony.
Ooh, I like that.
I like that a lot. I think I'm going to run with that one now. But for me, I've never in my career looked at work-life balance, because there's times that you're going to be more at work. There's times you're going to be on vacation. For me, I just always knew, and my wife and I planned accordingly to say, hey, we're going to probably front load, work harder in our 30s.
Yeah.
And hopefully build a business where in our 40s and our kids are older, where we can enjoy and make more experiences. And that's kind of what we've done so far. And praise God, we get to do that again. But now I'm in a phase or season where, my kids are now at this great travel age. I got a 15, 12, and 10-year-old. But like this past year, we went to Europe. We went to Greece and Italy. It was awesome. So
those are some amazing numbers.
Yeah.
The age groups.
So anyways, it's just for us, my encouragement would be is, don't think of it as work-life balance, but work-life harmony, and look at the end game. Are you wanting to have balance? I should say balance. Are you wanting to have more equal time here where you're going to have the same here? Yeah. Or would you be willing to maybe work more here to have more family time here? So I think it all goes out that way. You said this earlier, though. I like what you said. You're working 16 hours a day. The one thing I've realized, and I've traveled all over the country, especially this last year, we've done all these videos that you can go to our YouTube channel and watch, been interviewing some of these most successful companies. And the crazy thing is sometimes I'll bring that up, and most of them always say this. They're like, Jared, I don't understand how people, and these guys are working like 18, 20 hours a week. They're like, I don't understand what people do with their time.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm doing this on, Monday through Friday, then weekends I'm doing this and running all over the place. And they're like, quite frankly, like, I don't understand people working only 40 hours a week. What are they doing with the rest of their time? Yeah. And it just put into perspective where people think that 40 is the max hours. There's these entrepreneurs out there, and this one I'm talking about, he's running 70 trucks. He's got like 3 other businesses, a cattle company, farming operation. And he's just like, what else are people doing? Yeah. So it reminded me, it's like, hey, it's kind of what you enjoy. So, but there's got to be you got to always be cognitive that, if you're married with children, like, hey, am I given enough time to serve those? And again, if I look back, hopefully, there was times that I probably was more absent than I should, but hopefully we're paying for it now because of the fruit and experiences that we get to take now. Like, this year we've already got a list of trips planned out that we're excited to do. So, and I love the kids at all ages, but this is a very funny, this is a sweet spot. We're having fun. We're going, hunting, hiking, doing all skiing.
I noticed you guys came to a factory tour here together. So they actually go with you to work times and.
Yeah. So I think it was Christmas break, but my daughter, so my wife, praise God for her, she homeschooled the kids. Wow. Most of their upbringing. The boys are still homeschooled. My daughter now is in public school. She wanted to get on the dance team and experience that. But that has given us a lot of flexibility to have some of these experiences that other kids.
Yeah. I remember I was speaking at a business conference, and I kind of highlighted, everything going on in my life. I'm working on publishing a book. I'm getting involved with my university. I have a commercial real estate portfolio. I'm trying to grow and scale. I have a coaching business. I have 27 North vans. We're expanding into ambulances and military trucks. And I'm just kind of going through and just talking about not even realizing what it sounds to the average person. I'm just talking about my life. I'm passionate. I have an amazing team. I have a tremendous amount of trust in my team, so I can start something up and put someone in charge and let them run with it. And at the end, there's this young man. I remember him like it just happened, and his jaw is just like open, and he's like, "How do you have time for all this?" And I said the same thing. I'm like, "We get 16 hours a day. I'm just very efficient with my time. Why do you ask?" He's like, "Oh, I don't even have time to start my own business." I'm like, "Well, what are you doing now?" He's like, "Well, I'm in high school. I have a part-time job, and I never have enough time." I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna start with what I do every time. Like if someone tells me they don't have enough time, whether it's an employee or a friend or someone at a business conference, what is your screen time?" He's like, "Oh, it's probably only 4 hours." I'm like, "No, statistically speaking, it's 8 hours. Before we continue talking, if you value my advice, I need you to show me your screen time." He's like, "No, it's only 4 hours." I'm like, "All right, this conversation's over." He's like, "Why you got to be so blunt?" I'm like, "Because I know a thing or two. I'm still young, I'm still young, but I know a thing or two, maybe three." And so he pulls out his phone, 11 and a half hours average, like 1 week average, 11 and a half hours. Like, "I found your time.
Yeah.
Don't tell me it's right here. Your screen's taking it off." And so, yes, we have the time. We have the time. And I don't know. I think to settle for 40 hours a week and fill the rest with entertainment is not living to your fullest potential. I was on a discussion panel one time with business owners far more successful than me. And one of them, he said this thing. He's like, 99% of Americans don't reach their fullest potential. I don't know if you read a statistic somewhere or what, but I know I've spoken to thousands of people, and that's a common thing that I feel like someone or a majority of people have not reached their fullest potential. First question: do you feel like you've reached your fullest potential, or in other words, how do you know when to stop?
Simple answer is no. I don't think I ever feel fulfilled. And this could actually work to my detriment. So this isn't a healthy thing I'd recommend. But I think for me, my self-conscious, at the end of the day, before I'm putting my head on the pillow, I'm always asking God, did I do enough today? And I know God, I mean, I'm sure he's thankful for the work that I've done. But I think that for me, I'm always challenging my inner self. Like, did I accomplish enough today? And I think that's a struggle that I have. And I think actually last week I was riding on a trip with a gentleman, and he's like, Jared, and he was very similar to me, another business guy, and started and sold a business, but he was saying that just remember, you're never going to be satisfied.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's healthy and it's not healthy. So I don't know how to answer that any other way. But I think for me, I'm never at peace or at rest as much as I pretty for that. And maybe there may be come a day, but for me, I just keep thinking of like, there's just something about, I like, it's just these ideas. How can I, every week it just seems like for me, if I don't have a new idea every day, I'm almost feeling debilitated.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get something accomplished. So for me, like if I got just that new idea, and it can be something small that we can put into motion. That's where I'm just like, wow, I figured this out, or there's something new. And that's how I cope with it. So Paul, you're probably going to be the same way.
I agree. That's why I ask the question every single time when I meet someone successful is, how do you know when to stop?
Yeah, but I'll say this too, and I'll end with this. Our pastor, and this is what I love, the church we go to in Branson, but he challenges the senior citizens just like the younger folks. And he says, just because you're retired doesn't mean God's not done with you.
Wow.
And he challenges the 80-something-year-olds, even the 90-year-olds, like, just remember, God's not done with you. Like, you still have work to be done on this earth. And I love it because it just puts it in perspective. It's like, hey, some of us have this number of, you're going to be a certain age and retire and do whatever, but it's like, maybe you can retire from something and have some kind of financial success, but there's still work on this earth that God has you. If you're living and breathing, there's work to be done. And I think you asked earlier, I'm not a golfer because I respect all the golfers. Like, for me, that's not work, and I like to work, and there's other things that I want to
More
do.
valuable.
More valuable, but I have nothing against golf.
Yeah.
There's a guilt feeling. It's like, I could be going doing this and accomplishing this other stuff,
Yeah.
but there's great relationships that are done on the golf course.
Yeah. I can't remember a single time of golf just for fun. It's always got to be centered around a business decision.
Yeah.
And I always have my EA ask, hey, can we accomplish XYZ without golf? And if the answer is yes, we skip the golf part. I always say, let's just skip to the good part.
I always say mine in similar, like I'm a hunter and fisher. So like if someone's going to say, let's go fishing and make that an event or hunting trip, like, but it's the same as
let's just skip to the good.
You're holding a gun instead of a golf ball.
Yeah, I like that. Wow. You just expanded my thought process. Instead of golfing, let's go fishing. My dad loves
the Johnny Morris effect. Think about that. He's made all these relationships, but it's usually been in a duck blind, deer blind, fishing boat.
In a fishing boat, Jack Sykes said one of the greatest times of his success was when him and his team went on 16-hour fishing trips on tracker boats with their B2B customers, and they got to meet the technicians. It's just a whole powerful story that's in one of our podcasts. All right, I'll wrap it up with clothing. A little backstory about why clothing is so important to me is growing up in poverty and always having hand-me-down clothes led to bowling. And at one point I was like, all right, I'm going to go work hard to buy nice clothes. And I worked really hard, saved every dollar I had. And at that time, I don't know why they were trending, but they were high tops, basketball shoes. And I spent like $110 on them, which today's money I converted was about $500, is what a nice pair of basketball shoes. And I remember showing up to school and thinking, wow, that's it. My bowling is going to stop. And first reaction from the bullies, did you steal them? Where did you steal them from? And so I realized in that moment, wow, it's not the clothing and the shoes that define us. It's us, we as humans, that define the clothing that we wear. And we have to set that standard. And since then, my go-to outfit has been either khakis or golf pants and a dressed-in shirt. Whenever people ask me, I feel most comfortable in that. I don't know if it's because my great-granddaddy wore it to construction. My great-grandfather wore it when he operated a crane on the construction. My dad, as a truck driver for better part of 20 years, always wore a dress shirt and pants. I don't know if that shaped me, genetically speaking, but that's just how I feel comfortable. And so most times you'll find me in a dress shirt and some khakis, some comfortable shoes. And I always say I define and give value to the clothes and not the other way around. What is your view on clothing and what is your go-to outfit?
Yeah. So similar to your story, I remember growing up in a poor environment. I can specifically remember my mom putting clothes on layaway at Walmart, Rustler jeans and, going through the list. But I can also remember being a financial struggle to buy the Nikes, just to have a Nike instead of whatever other brand was out there. So as you get older and you can afford those, you want to be wearing those nicer clothes. And I think there was a season, again, I have super nice clothes, but I think it can be more of a representation of, that's a tough one because again, there's so many brands and stuff out there and people wear them to be that, but
I see bulk loads.
For me, I'm more of a brand guy. So it's like, for me, I'm going to be wearing the things that brand. I will say this, and maybe this can kind of segue out there. One thing we do at bulk loads, especially to our employees, but more important, our clients, early on when it came to marketing and branding, and I had this idea, growing up in a small farm community, these hats are like gold. And when you went to like the feed store to get some feed, grain, they always had these hats on there, and you could, sometimes if you asked nice, they'd give you this hat and you'd wear that, have it on there. But agriculture caps for farmers and stuff are just priceless. But I started looking at it's like, why don't we, since we're so tied close to agriculture plus trucking, why not start making or getting these hats made and we'll give them out? And so we started doing that. And you just realize the thing is, if you're going to be wearing a bulk loads hat, hopefully you're not trash talking. Hopefully you're not like these guys, blah, 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 but there's a psychological reason. Like if you're wearing this, again, you're walking around, you're a billboard for a walking company. Billboard. So since then though, we've, I don't know how many thousands of hats we've had done, but we've done shirts, we've done vests, but we give out, hundreds of thousands of dollars. People ask us all the time, you could create a store online and sell that. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why would I sell it when I can give these to these people? And so we give out, I mean, just even this morning, I was giving out all this. But it goes back, it kind of goes twofold. We get to give it out, but also we're being very generous
Yeah.
with the stuff that we're giving to our people. We're giving them gifts for them to use and wear. And yeah, there is our branding on there. But also we're giving them something. I think something's lost in business. People think everything's got to be a transaction, and it doesn't have to be that way. And again, the companies that I see stand out are the ones that you're seeing that are giving with no expectation in mind. You know, it's cool when I came over and visited you all before Christmas. Max, who gave us the tour, was just so generous. Like, first off, I didn't know if he was going to let us out on your showroom, but I got 3 little kids running around, and then like letting us crawl in the trucks and all that. But like for me, I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, these guys trust us enough that like, hopefully if we break something, we're not going to be in trouble. But it showed that how trustworthy and generous that you all were of your time. But that would be just sound advice that I would give to companies out there is like, be super generous. The companies that you see that are being over the top generous, whether it's with their time, items, but I think are going to be the ones that prosper. But again, if you're working with someone, they can tell it's clearly a transaction.
Yeah. That's funny you say that, being over generous. I remember sophomore year of college, business ethics. It was like a 2,000-3,000 level course. It wasn't all, fairly challenging, not over the top, but challenging course. And the professor made an example of Walmart and the Walton family, saying, in her opinion, the reason they had the tremendous success they had is because of how much they give. And I remember her putting on the screen of the millions of lives, not dollars, lives that they changed through their philanthropy work. And yeah, she attributed their success to their philanthropy and giving also to employees and whatnot.
It's such a hard concept, and I'm still learning, but the one thing I do know, the people that you see that are so generous, God rewards them. And again, don't do something to get God's favor in that. But I just know, and I can tell you story after story, but the times that my wife and I, that has been, sometimes we're like, yeah, we're going to do this, but I don't know. We have been so blessed for it. And some people, you can go through all these parables, but the ones that are holding on and not being generous are the ones that God doesn't bless. So,
yeah, that's powerful.
I don't know how else to say that.
And then
super generous.
Just a little plug in at the end before we end. Outlook on the trucking industry. My dad lost his business a year ago. Just the cost of operating and the devalue in trucks just put him under. Your professional expertise, what does the next 12 months look like for the trucking industry?
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate about your dad. Sorry to hear that. Trucking got really big in the COVID year. We had when COVID happened, you had supply chain shortages. Trucking got overheated a lot. And I can't remember how many thousands of new DOTs. We're still seeing that peel off of that because of the economy. The business that we're in grain and agriculture. I always tell people, as long as there's humans and animals walking on this earth, we have a job because people have to eat to a certain extent. But yeah, I think we're still, we're not at the COVID levels. I don't think we're ever going to reach that level unless you get some kind of natural disaster. But yeah, we see the next several years being very promising in trucking. And I think my advice for that, and whether you're in bulk trucking like we're at, or any others, but it goes back to really finding that niche, finding those customers and serving those clients. Really.
I like that. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for following along on our journey and listening today. I hope this had a positive impact on your life. And if you could show your support by subscribing, liking, and sharing this with someone that you think needs to hear it, it'd mean the world to me. I look forward to the next session that we'll have together. Thank you and Godspeed.